afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here today. I'm Marion King, President of the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance Board of Directors. It's my privilege to welcome you to our Lobby Day webinar. We're excited about today and very excited about next week's Lobby Day. We didn't get a chance to participate much in person in the last legislative session, so we're making up for that this time. Hundreds of thousands of Arkansans struggle with food insecurity, and over the last couple of years, we've seen so many first-time users access the Charitable Food Network and safety net programs. Families who never expected to be in this situation, where paying for school meals is hard, seniors who've never had to ask for help, and young couples starting out who are trying to save enough for rent deposits. While we advocate for and with these Arkansans every day, next week is our day at the Capitol to show our legislators that there's strong support for enacting policies that alleviate hunger in Arkansas. Before we get started, I'm going to go over a few housekeeping rules to help the webinar flow smoothly. We're going to pack a lot into the next 50 minutes or so. If you have any questions, including questions for our speakers, please place them in the Q&A chat box, and we will address them as we're able. You may chat freely in the chat box with other members of this webinar, but please be sure to put your questions for the Alliance staff in the Q&A chat box. Now, I'll turn it over to my fellow Alliance board member and government affairs guru, Becky Barnes-Campbell.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Marion. I'm Becky Barnes-Campbell, and I appreciate you sharing your time with us today and next week. We're excited to finally be back in person for Lobby Day. We have an aggressive agenda this session. The purpose of today is to share about what to expect next Wednesday, how to prepare for Lobby Day, and to answer your questions. So we have two goals for Lobby Day. The first is to get your legislators to come to the lunch at Capitol Hill Apartments. And then the second is to visit with them about 3 specific bills that we have related to hunger. So for those of you who are new to advocacy and lobbying, I'm sure you're asking how we do this. So, Jessica, if you wouldn't mind putting up the image of the invitation, please. We ask you to email this invitation to your state reps and state senator and invite them to lunch. Be sure to say that you are their constituent, that you're in their district. Be clear about the purpose, which is to talk about hunger in your district and how they can help specifically. If you prefer to call them, it's pretty much the same message. You'll just say, hi, I'm Becky. I live in your district. I'll be at Capitol Hill next Wednesday, February the 22nd. I'd love to invite you to lunch and talk about hunger in our district and how you can help. So between now and Lobby Day, please familiarize yourself with your elected officials if you haven't already. And if you aren't sure if they participated with us before, please put the question or your question, in the Q&A chat, or you can email Lance. You don't have to remember everything you hear today. We'll give you some condensed talking points next week when you register. So don't stress out. Just remember you're a volunteer in the area of food insecurity, and it's likely you're much more of an expert than you think you are, and certainly more so than our legislators. And we'll help you fill in all the gaps. So we plan for folks to arrive between 9:30 and 10. We're going to meet at the old gas station that's located directly across Markham from the Capitol. So it's just north of the sculpture of the Little Rock Nine, located at 1600 West 3rd Street. There's quite a bit of parking there. We kind of have an open parking lot. And we'll have signs and folks outside to kind of direct you where to go. Once you get signed in, we will feed you, provide you some coffee, get your t-shirt, and then review some last minute instructions about specific bills that we'll be focused on. If you want to attend committee meetings, we'll have the schedule there and let you know what's going on at the Capitol so you can make your way up the hill. A little bit before 11:30, we'll gather across from the Capitol at Capitol Hill, and where we'll have lunch. Hopefully you'll then be able to visit with your own elected officials and just visit with them and others who will be in attendance. After lunch, we'll go back to the state capitol, still in our t-shirts. We'd love for a group to sit in the Senate gallery and then in the House gallery as well. We want legislators to know and see that we're there. We know some of you have a long drive back home, so we're hoping that everybody can stay at least 30 minutes to an hour. The work on legislation begins that day, but it doesn't end. We will be in touch with you after lobby day because we're relying on you to help get these bills passed and to stop any bad ones. So a little bit just about lobbying. I know that that word can be a little bit tricky and people get a little nervous about it from time to time. Basically, all you're doing is talking. So you're just going to, introduce yourself, who you are, what you want to talk about. We're focused on hunger. These are the 3 bills that we find interest, and you're just going to engage in a very casual conversation. And again, don't be nervous. You guys know this better than anybody. So we keep saying these 3 bills. So we want to focus on those 3 for now, but hope to add more and of course to fight some bad ones as the session progresses. We are going to, we're going to have some numbers for you. Hopefully soon. The bills and the language are being drafted now. So we don't have that information to give to you today, but stay tuned. These bills would eliminate reduced price meals, increase the state food purchasing program, and raise asset limits for SNAP. We'll start with info on school meals, and I'll now turn it over to the Alliance's Patty Barker, leader of the Arkansas No Kid Hungry program.
Thanks, Becky. Again, I'm Patty Barker. I lead the No Kid Hungry campaign for the Alliance, and our staff folks focused on school meals, out of school meals, and nutrition education. And it takes a whole group, takes the team to work together with our partners at Share Our Strength, our national No Kid Hungry partners. And in spite of the odds, we need bold action here in Arkansas to reduce childhood hunger here and around the country. And Bernadette from Share Our Strength is going to tell us about good ideas on advocacy as well as a possible solution around the child nutrition work that we do that could help over 48,000 students in Arkansas get meals for free. And Bernadette is the Associate Director of Government Relations and Advocacy at Share Our Strength. And we've worked with Bernadette for a number of years on both state and federal policy. She brings more than 15 years of policy experience to the position and knows that in Arkansas, we need to know what's happening in other states with similar demographics and states that with similar political makeup to Arkansas. So excited to hear what you have to say, Bernadette. Welcome.
Thank you, Patty, and thank you so much for having me. I appreciate being with all the advocates today. I know you all have a lot to learn and are excited about making an impression on the Capitol, so which I know you will do. So I just have a couple slides just to kind of help guide the conversation today and share a little bit more about some of the policy ideas that Share Our Strength as a national organization has been looking at and some of the ways that it applies here in Arkansas. So I'm just going to start those slides. You can go on to the next one. That'd be great. And the next slide, not sure if I can control it. There we go. There I am in front of the Massachusetts State Capitol, which is in Boston, if you didn't know. But just a little bit about me, and my contact information is there. I've been with the organization with Share Our Strength, which I'll tell you a little bit more about, for about 8 years. And I have been an advocate and a lobbyist for my entire professional life. And really, that just means that I love to represent important organization, communities who don't have a voice necessarily in the halls of their state house or in the Capitol. I'm dedicated to seeing how I can help serve and improve communities and lives. And I'm very lucky to have found a career that has let me do that. And just in case you're wondering, no, I was not a poli-sci major. No, I am not a lawyer. I am just someone who felt called to do the work like you all do and do right now with preparation for the lobby day. I just felt called to do the work and to advocate on behalf of others. And the way that I have been able to do that work is by helping to change laws and improve policies so that way they better meet the needs of our communities. Thank you. So just a reminder, as Patty kind of shared, so the No Kid Hungry is a campaign by Share Our Strength. And so Share Our Strength is a national organization headquartered in DC. We are an organization really working on ending hunger and poverty. And our big kind of motto is that we think that everybody has a strength to share. No Kid Hungry is a campaign that we have been working on for many years, and the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance has really been there since the beginning with us and helping to improve outcomes for kids and helping connect kids to the child nutrition programs that serve them and help make sure that they have the nutrition they need to thrive all year round. Next slide. And so, just to paint a big picture, I think this is why we think that state and local advocacy is so critical, and why what you're going to be doing in your state capital is so important. Like I mentioned, the people who are some of the most vulnerable often don't have a voice where decisions are being made in state capitals and in Congress in DC. As an organization, we have really, we provide technical assistance and grants. We provide supports to schools and other nonprofits and state agencies around the country. We collaborate with organizations like the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance. But really, what we have found is that, when we can work to make systems work better, then more kids have access to the food they need to thrive at even faster rates. So that's why we've embraced the policy process. We've embraced using advocacy as a core part of our strategy, in addition to all those really important, tangential things that I mentioned before. When we can change laws and regulations that govern the programs that impact child nutrition programs, which are all federal new programs, when we can change the laws that can really unlock the power of those programs, we really think that, they can operate more effectively and efficiently. And really, that just means that more kids get fed at the end of the day. The more that a program is easier to operate for a provider, for a nonprofit, for a school, that means that more kids are accessing those important meals. They're getting that important nutrition that they need. And you can kind of see here, this is kind of how we go about doing that work. We lobby, we research, we support coalitions in states, and we have really important partnerships at the national level and at the state level to do that work. Next slide. So in the past, before the pandemic, across the country, states were really taking a lot of leadership. These are, like I mentioned, these are a lot of the child nutrition programs, or all the child nutrition programs really are federal programs. These are programs that Congress has authorized to enable kids to be fed in school and out of school. So the school breakfast and lunch program, the summer meals program, the after school meals program are all authorized by Congress. But states have a lot of power that they can actually make these programs work a lot more effectively, that they can replicate and ensure that schools and school districts are implementing the most current information and the ways that we know, again, that these kids are going to access meals in the most effective way possible. Sometimes Congress passes laws, right? And it's decades later and they have not been updated. So the states have a lot of opportunity and take advantage of the fact that they can use public policy to make them reflect the needs of today. And so a lot of the things that we've worked on in the past have involved making sure that breakfast after the bell is a part of this, school breakfast is a part of the school day, making sure that states see the value in how schools offer school breakfast or school lunch, and making sure that they kind of incentivize schools to provide using the most effective methods possible. We've worked on laws that have brought meal applications online, required schools to offer programs like you see here. So a lot of times it's been about improving the methods in which kids are served meals. But when we also saw, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw that there were a lot of temporary measures put into place that really helped the providers and schools manage the hardships that families were facing. And so we saw that they allowed programs to operate completely under kind of different set of rules than normal. And as a result, that meant that programs looked a lot different until last summer, when a lot of those rules actually expired. I think one of the things that most people are probably familiar with is that school meals were being provided for free for all students throughout the pandemic. And that did kind of come to a conclusion at the end of in the middle of last summer. And so for this school year, we had to go back to having everyone qualify for a free or reduced price meal or a paid meal. So what we are seeing is across the country, advocates are really taking the idea of how can states, since Congress did not extend this provision, how can states really start to make an impact on these kids who now have to go back to these previous rules. So, again, just to level set for those who may be less familiar, schools take applications and they use family income to qualify kids for free or reduced priced meals. Or if they don't qualify, they have to pay a meal. And so the reduced price fee is often called a copay. So some schools do use a program called the community eligibility provision, and that helps them serve all meals to all students for free. It qualifies them for like a school or school district. However, when kids qualify a reduced price meal through that application process, it can often mean that a lot of those kids are actually in families that are really still struggling or, really need some additional assistance. So for example, for a child in a family of 4 with a yearly income of $51,338 or less, that's a kid who will qualify for reduced price meals. So you'll see it's not a big economic threshold and not a lot of money. So even for a family like that, while the copays that families have to pay for a breakfast and lunch don't really sound like a lot, not a lot of times it's like $20, $25 per child per week, can definitely pose a huge hardship on families. And so, this smaller copay just can be simply too much. But school meals are obviously an opportunity for kids to have nutritious meals, and many families still ask their school to provide that meal. And so a lot of times school meal debt accumulates as a result as well, which really puts a hardship on the school food administrators. So what you're seeing here is a map, and it kind of indicates the states that, and there's kind of a qualification you'll see with the kinds of policies here. Sometimes it's inclusive of covering that a lot of states will put their own money into their state budget to cover the copays for maybe just breakfast, maybe breakfast and lunch. There's some states that have actually increased that poverty threshold, so that way more kids could qualify for a free meal based on state rules. And so you'll see this variety of different policies that states are implementing in order to help reduce that burden on these families. So in Arkansas, our policy team has estimated that there's about 49,000 kids who qualify for a reduced priced meal, that copay meal. And so if the state chose a policy eliminating the reduced price for the students, we estimated about 1.6 million more meals would be served to kids. So it's a significant amount of more nutrition, more food security that those 49,000 kids would face. And so for a pretty mild investment for a state, they can really see a significant burden relieved and budgetary pressures relieved at school administrators. So that's just a little summary of what eliminating the reduced price category can do for a state like Arkansas. It is a trend that we're seeing amongst other policy trends that I can talk about at some point, but wanted to just end it there. And you can go, I'm not sure if you've already switched to the last slide, but I'm happy to answer any questions about specific policies. We have a great team here who are experts and can kind of share even more about why this is such an important opportunity for Arkansas. And we're so excited that you all are going to be helping to advance the conversation on this kind of thing in the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernadette. We appreciate that. I believe we'll have some questions that people can ask, and we'll address those at the end. I'm Tamika Williams, Operations Director at the Alliance. I'm going to talk about the State Food Purchasing Program for a couple of minutes. If you represent a pantry that's part of the food bank system, you'll likely know about the State Food Purchasing Program. When the legislature passed the tobacco tax increase in 2009, a new program, the State Food Purchasing Program, was created. Each year, the Alliance is awarded nearly $1 million, with about $775,000 going to buy food, and the rest going to help pantries buy freezers, refrigerators, stoves, shelving, and more. We haven't asked for an increase since 2009, but we've been very successful in securing additional funds each year, usually through the governor's rainy day fund. Well, it's time to ask for additional funds. Numbers of users at the food banks and pantries are not dropping, yet food is not as plentiful as it needs to be. Our neighbors in Texas and Louisiana are asking for increases, and it's time for Arkansas to do the same. We will ask for the State Food Purchasing Program to double from $1 million to $2 million each year. Almost all of that money is spent in Arkansas, which means it helps producers and business people, and the grant money helps local towns and cities in which it's spent. So please help us double the State Food Purchasing Program dollars. Kathy, on to you.
Thanks, Tamika. First of all, I want to take a second to thank Jessica Chapman for organizing the webinar today and for keeping us on track with the video. And I want to reiterate something Patty said when she said that we needed to take bold action. And when you heard Bernadette talk about eliminating the reduced price category of meals that would impact almost 49,000 Arkansas kids, and you heard Tamika talk about doubling the State Food Purchasing Program, those are bold actions. And I'm going to tell you about one more bold action that we have the opportunity to take. And it might not be the last one. We may have more after this. So we've also tried to give you a little bit of background because we are engaging in these bold actions this year. We wanted to provide you with an opportunity today to learn the backstories on these various bills that we hope to see introduced next week. So you would have a little more knowledge when we go and start talking to our legislators next week. So I'm going to talk about asset limits as they pertain to SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, formerly known as food stamps. The Alliance has worked in this space for a long time. We have a statewide call center. We do a lot of outreach on SNAP, and we work on SNAP policy at both the state and federal level. Asset limits were enacted at the federal level to ensure that programs such as SNAP were available to those who needed the program while preventing those with considerable savings or a lot of money from receiving funds from those programs. However, that scenario of those with considerable wealth accessing anti-poverty programs has proved to be very rare over the years because there are income requirements for those programs as well in order to access them. What we've seen instead is that asset limits have an adverse effect. Asset limits have hindered a transition from government dependence to self-sufficiency. We and many other nonpartisan groups believe that raising asset limits in Arkansas would help people transition from government assistance programs like SNAP to financial independence. Other states agree. 36 states have eliminated asset limits completely. Another 10 have raised them. In Arkansas, however, we continue to impose asset limits of $2,250 for an individual, $3,250 if the household has an elderly or disabled person. So we actually know that eliminating asset limits or raising them would be good public policy. 1 decade ago, the Arkansas Department of Human Services was directed by the General Assembly to conduct a study on asset limits for SNAP and another anti-poverty program. The results were as follows. Asset limits discourage savings. Asset limits disincentivize maintaining a bank account and can increase the time a family stays financially unstable and on public benefits. Arkansas families need to save for unexpected car repairs, medical emergencies, and more. I mentioned the fact that the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance has a statewide call center, and we see the effects of asset limits firsthand. When the pandemic started and people called us wanting to know about SNAP benefits, we heard from people who were doing their best to save first and last month's rent. And then suddenly their wages are reduced, but because they were saving to move into an apartment, they didn't qualify for SNAP, which meant they're having to choose between moving into an apartment, do I eat? These were families who were unable to break the cycle of poverty. So we've seen the negative effects of asset limits firsthand. And as I said earlier, Arkansas has an asset limit of $2,250. Now, we don't even index for inflation. If we just indexed for inflation, the asset limit would be over $7,000. So even among southern states, Arkansas is an outlier. Only Arkansas, Tennessee, and Texas have asset limits for SNAP, and Texas has higher limits than we do. Southern and nearby states, and those are the states we like to compare ourselves to when we talk to our legislators, with no limits include Louisiana, Alabama, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida. Texas, which I've mentioned earlier, is looking at a bill this year to increase their limits, allowing for inflation, and also including a second car. In Louisiana, the change to eliminate asset limits was actually driven by the leadership of the department that administered asset limits, which means it was driven by what would be comparable to our Department of Human Services. They argued that asset limits were counterintuitive to the agency's goal of promoting self-sufficiency. Years after the change was made, that agency reports that the concern opponents had, which was that caseloads and applications would soar, has not happened. In a study done by Southern Bancorp in Arkansas, it was shown that in states with no asset limits, low-income families are 5% more likely to have a bank account and 8% more likely to have at least $500 or more in savings. And those are significant numbers. So we recommend an intermediate step of increasing asset limits in Arkansas. Potential sponsors are trying to determine right now the amount that they'll recommend, and they're working on drafting a bill. We've met with them. We've discussed this information that we're talking about today, and hopefully we'll have a bill number for you next week. If this bill passes, we'll work with DHS to ensure a smooth transition and process. We'll work to spread the word through our network and through our statewide call center. Arkansas families will need to have information about the change so they know that they won't be penalized for trying to save money. Caseloads would not increase, but the time, energy, and costs spent by the department could be used to promote activities that encourage economic independence. Again, there is a large body of evidence that shows that asset limits are holding Arkansans back. And we learned something this morning that we're really excited about for Lobby Day, because you're going to have an opportunity to witness a related discussion next Wednesday morning. At 10 o'clock next Wednesday, the Senate Committee on Public Health, Welfare, and Labor will hear House Bill 1340, sponsored by Representative Tosh. And you might say, well, how do you know for sure that they're going to hear that next Wednesday? Because it's listed on the agenda as a time certain bill to be heard February 22nd, which means it will be heard in committee that day. This bill passed the House 94-0, and it would allow Arkansas to apply for a waiver to exclude veterans' disability benefits as income for eligibility determination for SNAP. So let me help you connect those dots for those who are new to advocacy. This bill by Representative Tosh opens the door to exclude something as counting against someone who's applying for SNAP, even though this bill pertains to a narrow group. But it's an opening in the right direction, and it provides a firsthand opportunity for you to listen and learn next week and give you more information as we talk to our legislators about the other bills that we're talking about today. To recap, the issues you've heard about are ones we hope to have bills on ready to go next week, plus the related bill by Representative Tosh. We're looking at additional bills, and those bills might relate to food deserts. There may be a bill about college hunger. And we're also looking about ways we can improve access through administrative changes. And we'll also be alert and continue to be alert to bad bills. Now I want to turn it over to our Director of Advocacy, Lance Whitney, who has worked very hard to make all of the arrangements for Lobby Day. Lance has worked on setting up Lobby Day for about 6 months now, because you have to reserve your date quite a few months before the session begins. And Lance is going to review the day once more with you before we close shop for today. Thanks, Lance.
Thank you, Kathy. Well, I'm excited about my first Lobby Day as Director of Advocacy, and excited that you all are going to be here to advocate policies to reduce hunger. To recap, please get the email or phone invites out to your elected officials in the next 2 or 3 days. Don't forget to identify yourself as a constituent that matters. You want to invite them to the lunch of beans and cornbread, as well as visit briefly about hunger in your and their area. Plan on arriving around 9:30 a.m. and to get your t-shirt, cup of coffee, breakfast, and some talking points. We'll hand those out. We'll share options on what committee meetings are happening that day, unless you've already made an appointment with the legislator through your invite. We'll then gather shortly at 11 at the Capitol Hill building, and get ready for lunch. We will have a nice backdrop set up for photos, and if you've recently received a grant, for photo opportunities as well. The backdrop will be a nice place to get a picture with your elected officials, and we'll have some big checks ready to hand out. For those who can stay, we're going to head to the Capitol afterwards around 1 and settle in at the House and Senate galleries, as we imagine most folks will be needing to hit the road by 2-ish. We'll have that hour to be able to sit in on what legislation opportunities are available. I thank you all for attending today, but I saw there are a couple of questions that have arrived on the chat. Yes, we'll have some ideas about youth hunger advocacy. We've had a couple of youth participants in the past with some activities we have dealing with hunger in Arkansas. And there will be talking points handed out when we get registered and get your T-shirt. So those are the only 2 questions I currently have. Looks like there's one. What is the dress code? Well, we're going to have T-shirts to hand out when you register. So, you know, most of us will be in slacks or jeans, or there's not really a dress code. We want our T-shirt to be on. If that changes, I'll let you know. But I believe that's my understanding of the dress code. And if there are any other questions after this meeting, please email me. My email is Lance Whitney at ourhungeralliance.org. That's LWHITNEY at ourhungeralliance.org. And I'll get back with you. You'll see on the screen here are the events. The light green or yellow, that's where we're going to gather at between 9:30 and 10 and register. Now you can do a drop off there. There is some parking, about 10 places there. So the main parking is going to be where the red star is at the next level events. That's about a block and a half away. And then you'll walk up MLK Junior Drive and come to the, for those who park their cars there, can walk up to the gathering at the old gas station there. That's across the street from the Little Rock 9. And then where the dark green dot is, that's where lunch will be provided, and the opportunity to pick up the grant checks, as well as photo opportunities and visit with our legislators. So if you don't have any other questions, please feel free. I'm sorry, we just got a question here. If we haven't heard back from our legislator, if you haven't heard back from your legislator, there is an opportunity to contact them the day of lobby day and send a message to them as they're sitting in legislation. They may or may not be available. Their schedules are a little crazy right now, like the rest of ours. But it doesn't mean you can't let them know you came by to see them, and it lets them know how you're interested in fighting hunger. Okay. I think that answers all our questions. On behalf of the Alliance, I thank you all for coming, and we look so forward, and we'll see you next Wednesday. Thank you, guys.